Quick question, and be really honest with yourself. When was the last time you felt truly, completely alive? Not busy, not productive, not just getting through the day, but genuinely, fully, unmistakably alive. If you had to think for more than 3 seconds, drop a right now and tell me in the comments, when was it and what were you doing? Because I think you're going to find something very important in that answer today. And here's a hint. I'd bet it wasn't during your most efficient workday. Deepak Chopra's newest book, published in January 2026, opens with a question that I think is one of the most quietly devastating sentences anyone has written in recent years. And it is simply this: are you sleepwalking through life? And the reason it lands so hard is not because it's dramatic. It's because for most of us, the honest answer, if we are willing to look at it directly, is yes. A little bit.
Or more than a little bit. We wake up and we respond, we manage, we achieve, we collapse into sleep, and then we do it again. And somewhere in the middle of all that doing, something essential goes unnoticed, something that was always there, quietly waiting for us to stop long enough to feel it. Now here's something that might surprise you. Actually stop for a second, because this part is important. The ancient traditions didn't call this state depression or burnout or anxiety. They had a much more precise word for it. In Sanskrit, it's called Māyā, not as a moral failure, not as something wrong with you, but as a description of a particular kind of forgetting. The forgetting that happens when the thinking mind gets so loud, so insistent, so convinced that it is managing everything, that the deeper awareness beneath it, the one that actually knows what it's like to feel alive, gets drowned out. Does that sound familiar? Drop another if it does. So Chopra's new book, Awakening, The Path to Freedom and Enlightenment, is built around 40 sutras, concentrated statements of profound truth, each one like a small key designed to open a specific lock in the mind. And the central movement of the book is exactly what the title says: from surviving to living, from the contracted, fearful, ego-managed version of existence that most of us default to something he describes as awakened consciousness, where, and I find this phrase extraordinary, miracles become everyday occurrences. Now, I know that sounds like a big claim, so let's slow down and look at what he actually means, because the precision here matters. What Chopra calls the ego is not the self-esteem ego of popular psychology. It's something more specific. It's the part of the mind that constantly evaluates, compares, defends, and strives. The part that says, I need to be more, have more, prove more, control more, before I will allow myself to feel okay. And here's the neuroscience, because there is neuroscience. When that part of the mind is running at full capacity, which for most people is most of the time the brain's default mode network is dominant. That's the neural network associated with self-referential thinking, rumination, worry, and the sense of being a separate self besieged by a world that needs to be managed. And in that state, here's the kicker: the very capacities we most want access to, creativity, insight, love, intuition, genuine joy, those are suppressed. They belong to a different neural mode, not the striving mode, the open, receptive, present mode. And this is not a metaphor, this is measurable. Research on flow states, on creativity, on peak performance, consistently shows that the most alive, most effective, most genuinely human moments happen when the DMN quiets and something broader takes over. The ego steps back, awareness steps forward, and what emerges is what Chopra calls the awakened life. Okay, and this is where it gets practical, because I don't want this to stay abstract. Chopra's book includes something he calls the Wellbeing Index, which is a framework for tracking where you actually are on this journey, not where you think you should be or where you'd like to be, but where you genuinely are right now. And the index looks at things like, how often do you experience moments of genuine presence? How much of your day is driven by fear versus curiosity? Do you mostly react to life or respond to it? Do you have a felt sense of purpose, or are you going through motions? And here's the honest invitation I want to extend to you right now. Don't answer those questions with your head. Feel into them, because your body knows the answer before your mind does. Take a breath right now, actually, and ask, am I surviving today, or am I living? And if the answer is surviving, that's not a failure. That's actually the beginning. That's the first moment of waking up, the recognition that you've been asleep. And this, exactly this, is what the sutras are designed for. A sutra, and I love this, is not an instruction. It's not a command. It's a concentrated truth, like a seed that contains an entire tree. You don't force a seed to grow. You plant it, water it, and trust the intelligence of the process. The sutras in Chopra's awakening work the same way. You encounter them, you sit with them, and they begin to shift something at a level the analytical mind can't quite reach. Let me share the spirit of a few of them with you, because I think just hearing them might do something in you right now. The first territory the sutras address is identity. Specifically the case for who you actually are beneath the ego's story. The fundamental teaching here is the one we return to again and again on this channel. You are not the voice in your head. You are the awareness in which that voice appears. The one who is aware of the thinking is not itself a thought, and this recognition that there is a witnessing presence beneath all the noise is the foundation of everything Chopra describes as awakening. Now here's a small experiment. Try this for 10 seconds. Instead of following the next thought that arises, just notice that it arose. Don't judge it, don't analyze it. Just see it appear like a cloud in the sky, and notice that something in you is doing that noticing. That noticer, quiet, stable, present, is closer to what you actually are than any thought about yourself has ever been. The second territory is fear, because Chopra is very clear that the sleeping life, the survival life, is fundamentally organized around fear. And that awakening is not the absence of challenge, but the absence of fear as the primary organizing principle of your existence. And here's a surprising thing the research shows: chronic low-grade fear, not the dramatic kind, but the everyday ambient kind, the background worry about whether you're enough, whether you're safe, whether you're loved. That kind of fear suppresses immune function, accelerates aging, narrows perception, and makes genuine creativity nearly impossible. So this is not just a spiritual question, it is a health question, a performance question, a quality of life question. And the shift from fear to freedom is not achieved through willpower. You cannot force your way out of fear, because the forcing is itself a form of fear. It is achieved through recognition, through the same move we just practiced, stepping back into the awareness that is watching the fear and discovering that the awareness itself is not afraid. And before we go to the third territory, subscribe to this channel right now if you haven't already, because this is exactly the kind of conversation we have every single week. And I genuinely don't want you to miss what's coming. The third territory Chopra's sutras address is purpose, what the Vedantic tradition calls dharma, the particular way that this one expression of consciousness is meant to contribute to the whole. And the extraordinary claim the book makes, the one I find most worth sitting with, is that your purpose is not something you have to figure out or earn or discover through years of searching. It is something you already are. It is the natural expression of your deepest nature when the ego's noise quiets enough to hear it. So tonight, I want you to try something very simple. Before you sleep, before the phone goes back on, take 2 minutes and ask yourself, not with striving, not with anxiety, but with genuine, open curiosity. What would I do tomorrow if I were living, not just surviving? You don't need the answer immediately. You just need to ask the question and let it live in you, because that question is itself a sutra, a seed, and seeds, when planted in the right soil, always grow. If this resonated today, if something shifted even slightly, share this video with one person who you think might be sleepwalking a little right now. They need to hear it. Subscribe so you don't miss what we explore next week, and leave a comment below. What is one thing you would do differently tomorrow if you were fully awake? I read every single one. I love you all. And I want to return to something Chopra says in Awakening that I find genuinely radical, which is the idea that the awakened life is not a destination, but a recognition, meaning you don't get there, you see what's already here. And this matters because of how we've been taught to think about personal transformation. We've been taught that it's a project. You identify what's wrong, you apply the solution, you measure the progress, you achieve the outcome. But Chopra, and this is where the Advaita tradition he draws from diverges completely from the self-help world, says that the self that is doing the improving is part of the problem. Not because self-improvement is bad, but because the fundamental assumption underneath it, that something is broken, that needs fixing, is the very assumption that creates the sense of lack that drives the surviving rather than living in the first place. Here's a comparison that might make this concrete. Imagine you're wearing tinted glasses and everything you see has a bluish cast. You might spend your whole life trying to fix the things that look blue, the sky, the walls, the faces of the people you love, not realizing that the tint is in the glasses, not in the world. The sutras in Awakening are not instructions for changing what you see. They are invitations to look at the glasses themselves, to notice the filter. And in that noticing, something begins to shift, not because you forced it to shift, but because you saw it. And seeing clearly is, in the Vedantic view, identical with freedom. This is what Jñāna means, knowledge not as information, but as liberation, the knowing that frees. And Chopra's Wellbeing Index is a practical tool for this kind of seeing. It doesn't tell you what to do. It helps you see where the tint is strongest, where the contraction is most habitual, where the survival mode is most automatic. And from that seeing, from that honest, compassionate, non-judgmental recognition, something becomes possible that willpower alone could never produce, a natural, organic, effortless movement toward aliveness. Because aliveness is not an achievement, it is what's left when the unnecessary weight of the sleeping life is put down, even briefly, even imperfectly, even in a 2-minute window before sleep. And those windows, those small moments of genuine wakefulness scattered through an ordinary day, are what the sutras are designed to open, not enlightenment as a final destination, awakening as a daily, moment-by-moment recognition of what was always already here, waiting, patient, alive, which is what you are, which is what you have always been, beneath the sleepwalking, beneath the surviving, beneath the noise of a mind that forgot to notice the extraordinary gift of this one unrepeatable, luminous moment of being alive. And one last thing, because I want this to be something you carry into your actual day, not just something you heard once. Chopra's awakening gives us something I think is genuinely useful, which is the distinction between two modes of being that most of us move between without ever really choosing: the contracted mode, where fear is the silent organizer, where the ego is trying to manage everything, where survival is the default setting, and the expanded mode, where curiosity replaces fear, where presence replaces management, where the sense of being a separate self struggling against the world softens into something that feels more like participation, like belonging, like the river knowing itself as part of the ocean. And the extraordinary news, the news that I think the sutras are designed to deliver, each one from a slightly different angle, is that the move from contracted to expanded is not a long journey. It is not even a journey. It is a turn. A single, available, always possible turn of attention from what's threatening to what's present, from what's lacking to what's here, from what the self needs to protect to what awareness is already quietly, completely experiencing. That turn is what the traditions call awakening, not once dramatically at the end of a long path, but again and again in the smallest moments, in the ordinary texture of a life that has remembered what it is. That is what's available to you today, tomorrow, and every day after that. And it was always already here, waiting for you to notice.